Our guest today, Yong Lu, is one of China's leading experts on nonprofits and philanthropy. Lu is the CEO and founder of Evergreen Asia Advisors, a firm that helps clients devise and implement philanthropic initiatives in Greater China. She has worked closely with the Schwarzman Scholars Program at Tsinghua University, helping them with outreach to American philanthropists. Her experiences inspired her to write The Third Sector, a book introducing America's nonprofit sector to Chinese audiences, and Fundraising for a Cause, another book giving practical advice on fundraising. She will speak to us today on China's NGO sector and philanthropy in China.
15 years ago, there virtually nothing existed in China. And at that time, everything was done by the government system. And maybe 5-6 years ago, if we just look at the numbers, we see there are a growing number of NGOs, but mostly of them are still government supported, and then we call Gango type of NGOs. But in recent years, we see lots of grassroots private NGOs. They are growing in China, and they are trying to be independent, and they're trying to professionalize its practices. And at the same time, we saw those traditional government charities, they also began to realize that they needed to do some reforms and also to build their credibility among the public. If you look at the American history, with the economic development, there is a demand for social development, and this would be the same thing happening in China. In the past 20-30 years, the GDP in China has been maintaining two-digit high-speed growth, and there's wealth accumulated in China, and also the emerging middle class in China. We see this accumulated wealth. It's just like in America more than 100 years ago. You see this vast accumulation of the wealth, and this motivated people to have a desire to give, and also motivate people to have a desire to participate in social services and participate in this social progress. I think that this is a very natural outcome of economic development in China. And at the same time, when people, when they have challenges in doing philanthropy in China, they often argue that, private philanthropy is an American thing. It's American culture. It cannot develop in China. I disagree with that. If you look at the Chinese history, thousands of years ago, people began to have individual charitable behaviors. And if you look at the Chinese Buddhism culture or the Confucianism, they both greatly encourage benevolence. So this is a culture also deeply rooted in every Chinese heart, and it's a universal demand to contribute to the society and to give back to the society. I think it's really a part of the human nature, and it's universal. In the past, because of historical and political reasons, in China we have these big states, but a very small society. People rely everything on the government. But right now, with the economic development and the accumulation of wealth, people have this desire and awareness to give. And for the government parts as well, they realize the benefits of having the private sector to participate in the social services, because they also realize government can't just do everything for everyone. China is such a huge country. They realize the benefits of that, and to some degree, the government also encouraged the development of private social organizations. This is also good for economic development eventually. I think there are three major challenges. The first one is to do with the Chinese culture. Chinese people, they tend to trust their family members and members from the same neighborhood much more than strangers. And this is fine if we only talk about traditional charitable behaviors. People give to people on the street, and you see the result right away. But modern philanthropy doesn't work that way. When we do modern philanthropy, we don't just give people a fish. We want to teach them how to do fishing. We want to see long-term sustainable changes for the society. And that also means we won't be able to see the result directly, won't be able to measure it accurately, and we won't see the people that we're helping with. This kind of concept may be hard for the Chinese to adopt. And the second challenge is what I call the credibility crisis of the Chinese NGOs. In the Chinese public eyes, there are basically two types of NGOs right now. The first is those traditional government-supported charities, and they have lots of credibility crisis recently with scandals going on. And the other type is so-called private social enterprises, but they are transitioning from a traditional government-supported model to a hybrid model with some commercial interest, commercial motivation on the back. So none of these organizations have public credibility. Sometimes in China, people equalize privatization to commercialization, and this is also dangerous to build trust for the nonprofit sector. So that's a big challenge too. And the third one is the lack of infrastructure. We all know that for NGOs to thrive in a society, we will need several supporting systems available. We will need rule of law. We will need mature financial systems so that the endowment, the donor funds can be well managed and be sustainable. We saw in the past lots of Chinese private family foundations. They established with goodwill, but after a couple of years, they gave out all the money and running out of their funds and have struggled to raise money from elsewhere. There's still lack of concept of how to manage their endowment, their funds to be sustainable. And third, we also need a professional staff and professional management for nonprofit organizations, and this is China really needed to keep up. Yeah, if we look at the data of Chinese philanthropy, we can see two interesting comparisons. The first one is, according to the new Huron research, the average giving of Chinese is 1.3% of average wealth. And in the US, I think this number is around 5%. And for those making for those middle class in the US making 50K to 75K, I think the number is even higher. So obviously there is much room for China to develop philanthropy here. And secondly, if you look at how the money goes, how the philanthropic dollars goes in the society. In the US, the number one is religion, and the number two is education, and the second, I think, is human services and healthcare. But in China, the number one is poverty. The number one is disaster relief, and the number two is hometown building, like building infrastructure for donors' hometowns. So you can see that China's giving is still concentrated in those pretty preliminary areas of philanthropy. There are still more people, they care about those very traditional charitable giving, but there are less people concerned about long-term sustainable changes to the society. Like there are very few people care about research or doing arts and culture. This is the areas, lack of lots of philanthropic dollars in China. I think that takes time for the Chinese to develop this philanthropic concept to not only give people a fish, but also to teach them how to do fishing and then make sustainable changes. I think in China recently there's one thing they're really I think more advanced than in the US, is that they are extremely active with those social media to do fundraising and to mobilize people's interest in philanthropy. This could be far impactful than we can feel here in the States. They do lots of traditionally we call direct response here, but in China they call like public fundraising. They open a channel on the internet, and within hours they can receive donations from from donations everywhere, and it's very effective and very amazing actually. And this is a good way for them to build public awareness of philanthropy, and people like that. And I think it is also to do with the age differences of donors in the U.S. and China. In the Chinese, the donors tend to be younger, much younger than in the U.S. In the U.S., usually older people, baby boomers, they are the mainstream for philanthropy. But in China, it's the young people. It's the young people who care about philanthropy, who wanted to participate, and who are very versatile with this new technology to participate. So I think this is something in the U.S. perhaps we can learn from the China, and that's the young generation of philanthropists. I think for the Chinese philanthropy to develop, it's really every individual, they have a good role to play. In the U.S., and the modern philanthropic system was developed more than 100 years ago, and basically by a group of industrialists and philanthropists, people like Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. They donated to the society. They actually made it a system for modern philanthropy. And I think in China, it's exactly like that area. We had lots of opportunities there. For those Rockefeller type of rich, successful entrepreneurs, I hope that they would have more the motivation to give, and also to help shape the modern philanthropic system in China. And at the same time, philanthropy is not just about rich people. It's also about middle class and about everyone who can make a living for themselves, and at the same time they want to give back to the society and help the others. So it's really to cultivate a culture of philanthropy, and this is to do with everyone. If everyone can participate, and everyone can help build your community, and to increase the awareness of among your friends, among your family, among your colleagues, I think philanthropy in China will definitely thrive in the next few years. And things are changing very fast in China, and so does the private NGO sector. Yeah, thank you very much for Philanthropy in Motion for this great opportunity to share my thoughts with audience in Hong Kong and the mainland young Chinese. It's a great cause that you are doing to cultivate a culture of philanthropy in China. We need more and more philanthropists in China. We need people like Rockefeller, and we need people, just regular people who would like to contribute and give back to the society. We also need more professionals to be able to work for the nonprofit sector, and let's all work together to try to make China a better place.